Welcome back to the Boropolis Podcast. It seems like forever since I've actually recorded one of these, Nathan. But since our last episode, I mean, we've had just about everything. We've had Christmas, we've had New Year, we've had 2 Boro wins, a COVID outbreak, a new Boro signing, and I think that's everything. I've probably missed something off. It's been a hectic 2 weeks, really. But Nathan, above all that, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Good Christmas and good time off as well. But yeah, this podcast's probably going to be a long one, so just buckle up, everyone, for this one.
Yeah, Nathan's right in saying that. Buckle up, buckle in, because it could. I mean, this could stretch for 2 hours. Really, we've got so much to dissect. And just before we've started recording, obviously we're going to cover from where we left off, and of course that was just before the Nottingham Forest game. And I think the Nottingham Forest game, really, I mean, it was Boxing Day, wasn't it? And it was only a week ago, but it seems like a lifetime ago already. So we've got our notes, as we usually do. And I think the best thing to do, really, Nathan, is just get straight into the action, to be honest.
Yeah, let's jump in. So just to start off with, Nottingham Forest, Boxing Day, a big game, as we talked about in the last podcast. Forest were on a good run of results. I think they'd only been beaten once in 15 games under Steve Cooper, and were going really, really well. The Boro team, unchanged from Bournemouth. The 1-0 win over Bournemouth, which was so vital for us to get in that week before Christmas. But yeah, unchanged. And for me, I think a week's rest. So no real qualms about keeping things the same, really. I think you'll be the same with that, Chris, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I wasn't really too shocked when it was an unchanged team. It's become quite the theme under Chris Wilder, hasn't it? That really, unless the team picks up a suspension or an injury or, as we'll get onto later, COVID cases, the team remains the same as long as the prior result is positive. So, yeah, no real surprises there. I think what's best to do is just start talking about the actual game. And obviously, Boro, like they have done under Chris Wilder and like they have done all season, really, were out the traps quite quickly, on the front foot, and immediately there was chances. The one that sticks out in my mind, before obviously this comical own goal that we'll get onto, I think one was flashed across the box for Arnold Hernandez, who was obviously in the team, and he then I think he just put it wide, or because do you know what? I was doing the commentary for this game, and the lad that I do commentary with, Alfie, I said to him at full time, honestly, I don't think we'll ever commentate on a more difficult game than that, because there was about a million chances in the first half. So if I do get confused, I do apologise. But yeah, there was an early one for Arnold Hernandez, and then really it was sort of like a 10-ish minute period where, Boro were on the front foot but didn't really create anything. And then as soon as the Ryan Yates incident happened, following that until half time, it was just an absolute sort of ambush of Boro chances and Boro constantly having the ball.
Yeah, it was. And getting onto that goal, it all comes really from Boro pressing high. I think it was just Forest passing the ball around the back, and ball comes into Samba, and he finds Yates, who really should just get rid of it instead of just dilly-dallying on the ball. But Johnny Howson, fantastic pressing, putting pressure on Yates, and Yates doesn't have a look where Samba is, just guessing where he is, and beautifully finds the bottom corner, and that's 1-0 Boro.
Yeah, it was a comical one, wasn't it? I mean, I know last time we recorded this podcast, we laughed about Onel taking his shirt off and then being offside. But I mean, 2 comedy moments in 2 games, really, because of course, I had to keep a professional head on, but I was ready to laugh, to be honest, when he just, without looking, past it, and as soon as it left his boot, you knew that Samba wasn't getting there. And like you say, all credit goes to Johnny Howson, but it's got to just be cleared by the Nottingham Forest defence, whether it had been Samba or Yates. It was just an awful mix-up between the two of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And as we say, it's just one of them. Unfortunately, these things happen for Nottingham Forest, but Boro will gladly take it. And as we said earlier, Boro, after this first crazy goal, were just on the front foot and relentless, trying to get the second. There was a flurry of chances that really should have resulted in Boro doubling the lead, mainly Sparrar's effort that was straight at Samburn. He saved with his feet, but there were other chances. I think Hernandez put one over the bar that was deflected, and there was a Neil Taylor chance as well, good drilled effort. But I think the biggest chance just before half-time was from Isaiah Jones, really. I think it was Taylor put the ball across and it's flashed to the back post, and Jones has hit the post with an effort from a tight angle, which really, you're looking at these chances and you're just thinking one of them's got to fall for us eventually. I think we had 4 chances after the goal and none of them fell for us. But yeah, we were in at half-time 1-0 up.
Yeah, we were. And to be honest, going into the half-time, I actually felt sort of course, I was delighted with the way that we'd, started the game, but I also felt a little bit downbeat in the fact that we could have quite easily, the chances that we're talking about, and those that obviously were at the game and watched the game will know that they weren't just sort of half chances. Neil Taylor's is probably the most difficult out of all of them. And as you say, he forces Samba into a save, but the Sparrar chance that falls to him on his left foot, arguably should put away. It's from a nice distance. The ball rolls into him. It's not like he's receiving the ball sort of off the ground. It rolls into him. And to be honest, it looked like he was going to score only for a good save. And then, as you say, the Isaiah Jones chance, I think he'll probably look back at that and think, yeah, I probably should have scored. He was stretching, of course, and managed to get the ball back off the post, but probably should have scored after some good work from Neil Taylor, who was involved quite heavily in that first half, I thought. Of course, he'd started the previous game, but I was impressed with Neil Taylor again, actually, down that left. And I always thought when we signed Neil Taylor that actually sort of his, the real part of his game that he's known for is his defensive work, but playing in that left wing back role, he actually gives us, quite a lot going forward, in fairness.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing with Chris Wilder that I think you've seen everywhere Chris Wilder goes, even with experienced players like Neil Taylor, he does somehow develop these players and bring them on in the game. And yeah, Taylor's attacking outlet has improved tenfold, I think, under Chris Wilder in the 2 games that we've seen of him. And yeah, I think we'll get onto it later, but hopefully he's still at the club during this January transfer window period. But yeah, just moving into the second half, I think me and you, as you say, both felt a little bit, not, I wouldn't say downbeat like you've just said there, but a bit kind of gutted that we haven't finished the chances, really.
Yeah, because of sort of typical Boro, and we've all supported the club long enough now and know that exactly what typical Boro means. But when traditionally, of course, we're probably going to have to change our expectations, because under Chris Wilder we do create more chances, but usually it's a case of when Boro don't take the chances that they have, they are then punished for it in the second half, and luckily that wasn't the case. But you did feel that there was no way that Steve Cooper was going to let his Forest team come out in the second half and put on a performance. Really, I don't want to say as bad, because I don't think Forest were particularly dreadful. I just think Chris Wilder's team was superb in that first half, really.
Yeah, and as you say there, Forest were going to come out the traps in the second half and look to try and get forward and get that equaliser. And really, they should have done. Brennan Johnson down that right-hand side, we spoke about him being their real star player to look out for. And he turned McNair down that right-hand side for Nottingham Forest and found himself in acres of space to pick out someone in the box. And Zinkernagel's there 10 yards out or so, and he blazes over the crossbar. And watching that on from the stand, you just got to think like, wow, that's a massive chance to level the game. And the game could have been so much different had Nottingham Forest taken that chance.
Yeah, it was a real let-off, wasn't it? And from a player that really of Zinkernagel's quality, we've seen that he has notched a few goals for Forest this season already. And as soon as it fell to him, you were kind of just waiting for the ball to hit the back of the net, but he gets it all wrong and balloons it into the south stand, doesn't he? And really after that, you did sense that Nottingham Forest, although they were probably frustrated that that one didn't go in, they did gain a little bit of belief from that point. And immediately after, really, Joe Worrell, who from centre-back I thought actually impressed me, just on the ball, Joe Worrell, he's been linked with Premier League moves, hasn't he? And for me, it's no reason, no surprise, because, he almost plays at times as a sort of sitting midfielder, and from the chance that he did create himself, I think I remember him winning the ball back on halfway. He then threads the ball out to Brennan Johnson, who was, again, like you say, always going to be one of Forest's biggest threats. Johnson then whips the ball in, and Worrell just continues his run, and his header just sort of loops onto the roof of the net. But again, Nottingham Forest were growing in the game, and that was another good chance for Forest, really.
Yeah, it was. They had some good pressure after that Zinkernagel chance, and quite luckily, really, it resulted to nothing for Middlesbrough, and we go up the other end, and we grab another goal, double the lead. Andras Sparra, great work down the right hand side from Jones and Crooks, something that we've seen quite regularly in the last few games, really, going down the right hand side, whether that be Crooks in this game against Nottingham Forest, or whether that be Paddy Mcnair linking up with him in the Blackpool game. We've seen it time and time again going down that right hand side with Isaiah Jones, and this time it's Crooks that squares it across, and it's a ball that sort of tricks Samba into coming out and thinking he can reach it, and he just sort of gets something on it and it lands at Sparrar's feet, and there's no way he's missing from there. And I think from then on, it was sort of plain sailing for Boro. It was just quite calm, although Forest did have a chance later in the game where they did hit the post from Silva. It was really game, set and match from 2-0.
Yeah, it was. And I think in games like that, it was, a case of, had Forest managed to pull one back, I think they'll have probably gained a lot of confidence from that, and potentially may have gone on and got the second. But, like it did happen and how it panned out, I think if we were going to score the second goal, that was really just going to sort of finish any real chance of Nottingham Forest getting anything out of the game. I never felt if we got that second that they would even threaten again. And as you say, again, that same little link up of Isaiah Jones and Matt Crooks, who he loves that little right channel just sort of tucked in, but allowing Jones to run by him, and they've formed a great partnership down that right, haven't they? And we saw that connection again. And as you say, Crooks gets to the byline and really digs out across, to be honest, because it was close to going out for obviously a goal kick, and he sort of digs it out from underneath his feet, and Samba tries to get there. I mean, bless him, Bryce Samba all game got stick from the home fans. He wasn't very happy, was he? And he just gets it wrong, really, and tries to parry it out. And as you say, it falls to Sparra from that distance, and you were always confident that he's going to tuck that away. And I mean, we've spoken about trademark celebrations on the podcast this year, but that knee slide into a jump, I should add as well, it's got to be up there with one of my favourite celebrations, because he hasn't only knee slid, he's combined a little off his knees straight up into the air somehow. I don't really know how he's done it, to be honest with you, Nathan.
Yeah, he's a man full of confidence, isn't he? That was 2-2 for him. We'd spoken earlier this month after Stoke that Sparra looked a bit bereft of confidence, but we sort of knew that once he'd get one, then he'd sort of go on a little bit of a run, and we'll get on to Blackpool in a minute, but it looks to be all ripe and rosy in Sparra land. He's finishing every single chance he's getting at the minute, and let's just hope it continues, really, because the atmosphere in the Riverside and in the away followings with this Sparra chant is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It seems like, we spoke about it on the live, didn't we? That we do on Twitter on Thursday nights. But I don't think the club, from my memory, has ever sort of jumped on a single chance like it has done with Andras Sparrow. And, you know, similarly, I compared him to Yeli Vossen. I think it might have been at you actually, where, you know, he is on loan, and a lot of the fans just love him. And although up until sort of course, that Bournemouth game, Sparrow was struggling in front of goal, you always felt with the support that he has from our fans that if he got one, it would be a case of he'll score 3 or 4 in a row. And obviously that's proved to be the case. But I think a lot of credit has to go to the Middlesbrough fans, because he's been absolutely bombarded with support and of course that chant, which everyone knows by now. But yeah, it's brilliant to see Sparrow now getting himself amongst the goals, and I think he's probably brimming with confidence, as you say. So going from that really onto the Blackpool game, of course, a few changes. Little did we know, actually, I don't think anyone was aware that one of the changes was down to COVID. Of course, Johnny Howson dropped out the team, and that was for Sol Bamba, obviously pushing Paddy Mcnair into midfield, and Neil Taylor also dropped out just for a rest, I think, really. And of course, that meant that Lee Peltier come back in. You were probably surprised, really, of course, given that you were, we should add, at the stadium at Bloomfield Road, following the Boro away. And I mean, do you know what? I'm that excited to start talking about the action that I kind of just want to skip the lineups, but we'll stick to some form of order, Nathan. And yeah, how did you feel when you seen that team?
Yeah, I think the obvious sort of verdict was there's got to be an injury or something to Howson. Now we know it's COVID. Just get well soon. But yeah, McNair would slot into that midfield role. Bamba would come in into that centre of defence. Dale Fry would probably move left, and you kind of just hope that it didn't really disrupt the balance that had been brought into that defence since Stoke. Really, that defence had been unchanged since Stoke away at the start of this month, and sort of you just hope that it didn't disrupt the confidence that defence had made itself really in the last few games. And Lee Peltier coming in at left wing back, probably a role he's never really played, but he's outstanding, really. I think he just always will just do a job for the team. No matter where he's needed, he'll do a job for the team, and he'll always put in a 6 or 7 out of 10. And he just props to him. He's fantastic. So yeah, really just thought, here we go again. Let's go for it, and let's try and get 3 points again away at Blackpool.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, going into it, of course, this was all prior any knowledge that, you know, there was any form of COVID in the Middlesbrough camp. So, you know, everyone was unaware of why Johnny Howson was missing. But, you know, we move on into the action, and straight away, really, from, you know, a game prior to the Blackpool game, Nottingham Forest, where Boro created so many chances, we sort of continued that into the early stages of the Blackpool game. And almost immediately for Boro, Paddy Mcnair flashes one across the box. And that man, Lee Peltier, who you're talking about, probably with a bit of a nosebleed because he's not used to being that high up the pitch, somehow manages to put the ball wide. And, you know, I think Peltier probably would say himself that he should be scoring so early on in the game.
Yeah, he probably should. From the away end at Bloomfield Road, you couldn't really tell who'd hit it, whether it was going out for a corner, whether Peltier had got it and it just like knocked onto him. But yeah, he should really finish that chance. But as you say, he probably has got a nosebleed, being on the edge of Blackpool's 6-yard box rather than defending on his own 6-yard box where he usually is, to be fair. So yeah, we'll let him off with that one, knowing the full-time result.
Yeah, of course we will. You know, he puts in a great shift, so he's not expected to be scoring goals. So yeah, as you say, we'll let him off for that one. But after that, really, it was Blackpool that had a couple of chances. And, there was the one that is in my mind already, and it actually comes later than the chance that I'm about to mention. But there was a few chances in the first half, particularly where, as much as they've looked solid and sort of regimented and all know the rules, there was a few times in this game where I did feel like Boro's defenders were a little bit nervy. And I don't know how you feel about this, but, it may have been just through a change of personnel. Of course, it doesn't really matter now. And we got the 3 points in the end. Of course, we'll get onto that. But there was a few chances, and there was one where, of course, Dale Fry and Dijksteel were sort of really mistaken with each other, and that leads to the goal. But the early chance that I'm talking about, of course, comes from a cross that James Husband heads back across goal. And I think Dale Fry does incredibly well to actually get the block in. And that was only early on in the game, really, Nathan.
Yeah, as I say before the game, just looking at the team sheet with Bamba in there instead of McNair being in that back three, you kind of just thought hopefully the balance wasn't disrupted too much. And I think really for fans that watched the game, it was clear that the balance was a bit disrupted, really. I think Dale Fry doesn't look all too comfortable on that left-sided defence compared to if he's in the centre or on the right, which, to be fair, you can kind of understand why he's not really all too good on his left foot, I think it's fair to say. He doesn't really drive inside like McNair does. And really, I think we're just glad to get out of this game with 3 points, really. Blackpool did have chances, but they weren't all too clear-cut, really, in that first half for me. None really tested Joe Lumley to my knowledge. I can't really remember in that first half.
Yeah, I think also another point that we should just make as well is, we say it may have been personnel, but, we can't be sure. But there is a genuine case that some of the players playing against Blackpool already had COVID. So potentially, we can't be sure because we don't feel what their bodies are feeling. But, they could have been slightly tired. They could have been sniffing or coughing during the game. And I think the rules have sort of come in and prevented that now anyway from the EFL. But I don't think we tested on the day of the Blackpool game. So there is a strong chance, as I say, that may have been the reason why the performance, despite the result, and that is the main thing, the performance wasn't actually fantastic compared to what we've seen previously under Chris Wilder.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think necessarily that the intensity that we've shown, especially in that first half against Nottingham Forest, it wasn't really there against Blackpool. I thought we weren't lethargic, but it was just a bit slower to what we'd been used to under Chris Wilder so far. And really, the first half, it was just a bit slow, wasn't really that end to end, if I'm honest. Although there was chances at both ends, it wasn't really free flowing through the middle of the pitch or anything like that, but just a chance for Boro. Sparrow had a shot blocked on the line by Marvin Ekpiteta. It was just a bit all over the place, bundling around the 18-yard box, and Sparrow fires a shot at goal pretty much in the middle of the goal, and Ekpiteta gets his body in the way and stops that one from going in. But really the biggest chance of the half for me was Hernandez going through one-on-one with the Blackpool goalkeeper. It all comes from Richard Keogh clearing a ball that bounces back off his own man. I think it was Kenny Dougal, and Hernandez is in. He's obviously going to beat Richard Keogh for pace, and really you're just holding your breath expecting Hernandez to finish it. But yeah, he just fires it straight at the keeper, and really it's another chance that goes begging. And you look at these big chances that we've missed in the last few games and you're just hoping that we start to finish them more often.
Yeah, just a word on Hernandez, obviously, because he come into the team, of course, prior to the Blackpool game, but then, continued his little run of games that he hasn't quite had under Chris Wilder. And, although he didn't put that chance away, I do quite like the impact that Arnold Hernandez has had. I think his pacing behind gives us something a little bit different. And, quite unfortunately for Hernandez, of course, I'm sure he won't be too bothered because we got the 3 points. But, what more comes on later, and, we all know what happens at the end of the game. But just a word on Arnold Hernandez, because he hadn't started much under Chris Wilder. But do you, quite like what you've seen of him in that role that typically he hasn't really played in the past as part of a front two?
Yeah, I do. I think, of course, you've got to take into consideration that he is playing out of position. He's usually out wide in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. He's wide of a 3 usually going forward. So being in a front two, it is different for him, but I think his link-up play, bringing the other attacking midfielders, you look at Tavernier and Crooks, bringing them into play, linking up with Sparra, well, I think he's doing really well. And there was one incident in particular in that it was in the start of the second half, actually, just Hernandez just pressing relentlessly. He chased round about 3 players, covering about 30 yards in the process, just full tilt sprinting. And I just thought, that's what we want from our forwards, pressing from the front. And really, they're the ones that want to be initiating this press in this new Chris Wilder system. And I think he does suit it well and gives us a good option up there.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that, and I do like what I've seen from Hernandez since he's come into the team. Just unfortunately, he's probably going to lose his place now due to signings, and of course, Duncan Watmore really nicking that goal at the end. But we won't go into that just yet. And moving into the second half, it was Blackpool that went the closest. Firstly, in the second half, and it was really a strange effort, because I think, the ball comes in from the left, and Gary Medine really just tries to hook it back across goal, and it ends up looping across Lumley. And again, it was a bit of a nail biter, because you kind of think that's going to drop in at the back of the net. It comes off the post, and luckily Bamba's there to head away. I think he collides with the post as well, just as he's clearing it. But that was a bit of a let-off for Middlesbrough early on in the second half.
Yeah, it was. It was a big chance, really, that came out of nothing, to be fair. Gary Medine has no right to be hitting the post or threatening Joe Lumley from there. It was a very tight angle, but he's created a chance out of nothing, and it was very nervy as the ball was looping back across goal. You just thought, is it going to sneak into the far corner, or is it going to go wide? You didn't know what was going to happen. But yeah, just before that, the other chance again, Connolly fired a shot that deflected off Fry, wrong-footed Lumley, and from the away end, you thought, oh no, this one's in. This is sneaking in the near post, but it just went narrowly wide. And that Medine chance, it sort of just emphasised that Blackpool were getting a grip in the game. They were on top at the time. And really, Boro needed to get a foothold in the game again in that second half and just sort of become more comfortable and get ourselves back into the game.
Yeah, of course. As you say there, we needed to get ourselves back in the game, and there's no way better to get yourselves into a game by going up the other end of the pitch and scoring, and that's exactly what Boro did. And that man again down the right, Isaiah Jones, gets to the byline and pulls it back, and the man in form, really, the Slovenian, produces a quite exquisite finish, really, a back heel that as put on social media by ourselves this week, he'd actually executed in the warm-up for the Nottingham Forest game. And I think someone actually replied to that tweet saying that he tried the exact same thing in the warm-up against Blackpool and got it all wrong. So luckily for him, he manages to execute the back heel perfectly during the game. And then from that point onwards, he wheels away, rips his top off, and gives us quite the celebration again for the second game in a row.
Yeah, it was. And I'd just like to point out how good the work was from Dijksteel as well. Dijksteel playing on the right side of the back three was all the way up there next to Isaiah Jones, sort of just pulling a man away so Jones could get in behind and create that chance for us. I thought that was outstanding work from Anthony Dijksteel. But yeah, fantastic work from Crooks and Jones again. That partnership's been fantastic. And yeah, Jones puts it on a plate for Sparrow. Sparrow finishes it brilliantly with his little flick. And the away end just, wow. And it needed collapsed. It's only a little temporary stand. The people that have been to Blackpool know it's only a little temporary stand with like, it's a very strange stand. And when Boro scored that goal, wow, it felt like the stand was just going to cave in, really. There was people all over the shop, people falling rows below themselves. It was just crazy. And as we saw, loads of people down the front there of the stand that we were in celebrating with the Boro players, and that's fantastic to see as well.
Yeah, fantastic to see. And of course, any celebration where, the player isn't offside and whips his shirt off is usually a goal that means something. So, I'm sure Arnold Hernandez would have wished that was him in that position. But of course, luckily for Andras Sparrow, he wasn't offside like Arnold, and I think he did obviously get booked for the celebration, but it was all worth it and not just offside as we'd seen previously. But yeah, moving on from the opener, of course, in the game, I felt afterwards, to be honest, that actually Blackpool from that point, and they could potentially have let the heads go and sort of, drop deep and almost invited more pressure on when they'd scored, but they actually sort of puffed the chests out and thought, well, we need to try and get back in this game now. And sort of not long after, really, the pressure starts to build and they whip in a corner again. And it's similar to that Medine chance. It's just a sort of glance. And I think it's Callum Connolly, I might be wrong, and it just flicks off the post. And there's two men waiting to tap it in at the back post as well. And, Lumley is sort of flat-footed, not expecting them not to score, really. And somehow it just nicks off the post and goes wide. But at that moment, I was already nervous, and I don't want to say expecting because, I shouldn't be that much of a negative Boro fan, but it did feel like we were under the cosh a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, it felt like something was coming in the game. They had another chance just after. They threatened with corners all day long, really, Blackpool, and they had another one that was flicked to the back post, and Ekpiteta and Medine were coming in, and somehow they failed to bundle the ball in the back of the net, and it lands in Lumley's arms, and we were just all thinking, how have we got away with this one again? Clear-cut chances aplenty for Blackpool from set pieces, and really Boro were under the caution. Late on in the game, you're just hoping Boro see it out. You think Uche came on for Sparrow, Watmore came on for Onel as well, and you just kind of hope that we could see it out, really, but a nothing ball as stoppage time goes up on the board. A nothing ball is fired forward from Ekpiteta, and it sails over Dale Fry's head. Maybe he should deal with it. It looks like he should. It looks like he's going to head it, and at the last minute he sort of ducks out, and the ball bounces off the knee of Anthony Dijksteel and into the path of Lavery, who just side foots it in off that near post. And stood in that away end, you could just feel the deflation. It was awful. It was just one of them where you just think, typical Boro. We've got ourselves a good goal from Sparrow. We've been under the cosh, and we just can't see it out once again. And yeah, it was one of them same old Boro performances, you thought.
Yeah, you thought, didn't you, Nathan? And just to add a bit of context to obviously, Nathan, and I think we've briefly mentioned it, but not gone into detail, that your record following Boro away this season, and to be honest, over the years really, but especially this season, has been nothing short of a shambles, to be honest, in terms of results and goals scored. So do you want to just go into that before I mean, just to emphasise, of course, it's never nice, but I'm just thinking about you stood in that away end as Bloomfield Road erupts, and you're just thinking, why do I do this to myself? But yeah, just go into a bit of detail as to what your record away following was prior to that Blackpool game.
Yeah, so the record of my away following this season is prior to Blackpool was 5 attended, 1 goal scored, and I'm pretty sure, right, I think it was 2 losses, 2 draws, and we hadn't, or maybe 3 draws. I don't know. I can't remember. But we'd only scored 1 goal away from home. That's all that matters. Like 5 games, 1 goal away from home. And you just got to think, like, in that stoppage time period, I was just completely gutted, just thinking, how have we let this slip? We've got a journey home here that's 2.5, 3 hours. And yeah, just gutted. And just a shout out as well, because I was in the away end and I did go a little bit balmy, which was my own fault, just getting a bit carried away with myself. Shout out to Gary Medine, because when the goal went in, the Blackpool players booted the ball in their stand. And obviously Anthony Dykesdale, the one who's the ball's ricocheted off him, he's made the mistake for the goal. He's probably gutted with himself, a bit angry as well. The ball's being thrown back down from the home stand, and Dykesdale's gone over to where the Blackpool players are celebrating. None of them have picked the ball up, but Dykesdale's picked the ball up to like throw it back to the centre. Gary Medines came over to Dykesdale, grabbed him by his shirt like that, and then put his head towards him to go and headbutt him. And I was watching this absolutely livid, just thinking he's trying to get Dykesdale sent off, trying to get a reaction out of him. And Gary Medine picked the ball up and started like sprinting back to the halfway line to try and get Blackpool a winning goal. How was that for you, Gary?
Well, do you know what? I hadn't even noticed that. I mean, that is the difference, of course, from myself being a bit of an armchair away fan, of course, watching the game at home. But yeah, I didn't even know that, in fairness. So yeah, I'm sure Gary Medine was... I'm sure he was as raging as what you were when we went in the winner, as what you were when they got their equaliser. So we've been, well, I mean, me personally have been fumbling my words, just ready to talk about it for the first however long we've been recording for so far. So finally we're at that point. Nathan is in the depths of despair that we've thrown away 3 points on the road. He finally thinks he's going to break his away fixture hoodoo, if you want to call it that. Blackpool have just equalised, and then from that point onwards, we kick off again. The ball's pumped forward. There's a little bit of possession for Blackpool, and then James Husband fires the ball out wide to, I'm not actually sure. Who was it? Sorry, Mitchell. Dimitri Mitchell on the left, and Isaiah Jones is just on him like a rash and quickly wins the ball back off him. He glides forward. I think there's a little exchange again between... Is there an exchange, or does he just go the full way himself? I'm just
goes the full way himself, yeah.
Wins the ball back, drives on, as he has done numerous times in this newfound right wing back role, rolls the ball across the face of Blackpool's goal. And there is Duncan Watmore in the perfect place at the perfect time to just stab the ball with his left foot home. And I mean, what followed can only be described as pandemonium, to be honest. Even I was jumping around like I was in the away end in my living room. So I can't even begin to imagine what it was like in that away end. Nathan, just tell us what it was like.
Yeah, just vividly got in my memory Jones winning that ball. I mean, what a tackle, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great tackle. That's not actually been given enough credit, because obviously people talk about the cross and the run, but a great tackle from Jones.
He's he's on him straight away on Dimitri Mitchell's first touch, wins that ball perfectly. Mitchell's on the deck and Jones is on its way. Jones just, as you say, glides. He doesn't even run, Jones. He just glides. And he puts a perfect ball across the face of goal. Uche's there with Ekpiteta sort of pulling him away. And Watmore's just there to prod home. And wow, I mean, I can't even describe that away end. It was just balmy what went on. People on the pitch, people falling rows in front of them, everyone hugging everyone. Everyone's probably got the Blackpool away variant of COVID now, but who cares, because those scenes at the end were just absolutely fantastic. The team didn't know what to do with themselves. You saw Matt Crooks go one way towards Jones, whether he's thinking to congratulate Jones for putting the ball across, realises everyone's got over at the fans. He's run behind the goal, bit of shithousery on the way behind as he's doing like his arms to the Blackpool stand. And yeah, wow, what a moment, and what a untypical Boro thing to do, to concede such a late goal and then to go up the other end and get a winner. Like it's just unheard of for Middlesbrough Football Club to do these things, and they did it. Wow.
They did do it indeed, Nathan. And you know, we've spoken previously, you know, quite a lot about, you know, the sort of trademark that is Paddy Mcnair's knee slide. We've also spoken about Sparrow and his celebrations against Blackpool and against Forest, but I'd be amazed if the celebrations for the Watmore goal are topped for a long time, never just mind this season, for years to come, to be honest. You know, and I'm talking about a goal, not talking about when, I was going to say when there, but I'm not making that prediction on the podcast. If we were promoted, I'm talking about just a goal. And yeah, it was just remarkable, really. There was people on the pitch, and you know, they probably shouldn't be, but with the adrenaline of that goal, it was just probably all too much to take for some of the Middlesbrough fans. And I mean, fans on the pitch, Boro players hugging them, there's security trying to stop it, there's all sorts going on. And then from that point, of course, I think Blackpool actually had in the last seconds of the game a half chance which falls into Lumley's arms and he hits the deck. But once that full-time whistle goes, the away fans just erupted again, and the full-time scenes were just as good, really, Nathan. Just talk us through, of course, Chris Wilder, Leo, and all the players coming over at the away end following the full-time whistle. It was just another magnificent moment in the many moments that Chris Wilder's team are providing us at the moment.
Yeah, it was brilliant. We've seen Wilder say in his press conferences over the last few weeks. I think it was after Stoke. He'd got everyone in a huddle, didn't he, at Stoke away after full time, and sort of said, you don't go as individuals to the fans, you go as a team, because that's what you are. You're a team of players and you're a squad. And yeah, it was so good to see the full squad. All the backroom staff came over at the end and just applauded that away following. 3,500 on a Wednesday night in Blackpool was terrific numbers, really, and they were so loud throughout the full game. From my perspective, obviously being a part of that, and yeah, I mean, just the unity of this group of players at the minute is fantastic to see. And I know with all the plaudits that he's Slovenian is getting and the Isaiah Jones chant, I think one of my probably my favourite chant at the minute is just Chrissy Wilder's Red and White Army. I just absolutely love it to bits, because I don't know what he's done to this group of players to change them round and to make them into this footballing side again. but he's got to be a wizard or something because he's just a genius.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not only, the style change, and that's impressive enough. I think as much as, under Neil Warnock, and I'm not going to get dragged into that a lot of people thought, at least sort of the majority thought, that he wasn't getting enough out of the team. I don't think anyone really imagined that some of the stuff that we played against Forest, and yeah, admittedly, we weren't at our best against Blackpool, but it's just that momentum that's picked up so quickly, and partly because of wins, of course, it always breeds momentum, but partly because of the performances. And as you say, Chris Wilder, even if it just ended now and we went on a horrible run, I think these few games would just be remembered for a long stretch of time because of that just quick turnaround. And of course, I hope, and I'd say I'm 80% sure that we won't just not win the game from now until the end of the season. I don't want to tempt too much fate, but yeah, it's just been remarkable, hasn't it, Nathan? And that Blackpool win epitomises everything that this Chris Wilder team is about. What I loved about the Watmore goal especially is, from the absolute sheer deflation of conceding so late on, once Jones wins the ball back and gets to the byline, I think there's 3 other bodies, possibly even 4, that have gone that high and haven't just, sort of put their heads down and thought, well, we're going to have to accept a point. They're thinking, well, it's not over until the whistle goes, so we've got to commit. We've got to be there until the last seconds. And they got the rewards for that. And yeah, like you say, the scenes at the end were just fantastic again, weren't they?
Yeah, they really were. But just going back to that goal there, Jones wins that ball and there's 4 or 5 bodies breaking forward to get into the box and provide an option. That would have been unheard of under Neil Warnock and previous managers, really. Just another player to mention, Marcus Tavernier. I don't know what that lad's got in his legs, but he's the most just fantastic engine of a player I've ever seen in my entire life. You just, at times during the game, you were thinking, you surely haven't got much left in the tank to keep running. But he was one of the players breaking for that Watmore goal. And I mean, I'm pretty sure he exerted more energy celebrating the goal, if I'm honest, because the photos of him running over to the away end, doing a little gallop with his arms outstretched, screaming. I mean, wow. Yeah, he's been good for us under Chris Wilder. He really has, and his work rate is just beyond a joke. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think sometimes some people get a little bit upset that, everyone talks about Tavernier's work rate and how much distance he covers. But that's not a way of underselling what he gives to the team. It's just that is such a good attribute of what he brings to this team that it has to be mentioned. And like you say, they all wear the GPS monitors underneath the shirts. And I'm sure as that 93rd minute hit, every single one of their GPS monitors were going absolutely crazy because they were all doing probably the fastest sprint to the away end as what they had done during the full game, to be honest.
Yeah, and it is just one of those things where you hear opposition fans thinking, oh yeah, well, you haven't won the league, you have just beat a mid-table side away from home in the last minute, but we haven't seen anything like that in recent years, really, from this Middlesbrough Football Club side. I've just got down there, never give in, and they didn't give in, and they got that goal. They got their rewards for pressing and for all breaking forward. And wow, yeah, it is 3 points, and that's all it is. But that momentum is vital, and we've got that on our side now as well. And we thought that would lead us into another fantastic game on New Year's Day against Sheffield United. But what unfolded in the days after Blackpool away is just quite remarkable, really. Who would have thought what would have panned out? It was
Yeah,
crazy, and we'll get onto that now.
yeah. I mean, as you say, after the absolute scenes, we'll call it, at Blackpool, everyone was on an absolute high. Just really, probably now waiting and couldn't wait until we then travelled to Sheffield United on New Year's Day. And as you say, before we'd even had a chance to sort of get excited massively um, for the Sheffield United game, the Thursday night comes around, of course, after the Blackpool game. And we get the news late on Thursday night that um, there's been a COVID outbreak and Middlesbrough want to try and get the game called off. And, you know, of course, typically we just finished our live on Twitter and, you know, I think we went on for a little bit longer. And then just as we ended it, there was a few people, I was looking through the notifications, and as normally as these things happen, a few people were sort of tweeting in and saying, oh, there's been a COVID outbreak, you know, my auntie's dog's sort of brother works at the training ground and has said that. And of course, you take things like that with a pinch of salt normally, don't you? And it never really turns out to be true. But in this case, it was true. And, you know, Thursday night comes around, we get the news that Boro want the game off. And then the Friday, I mean, we just spoke about it briefly before we started recording. It was just, it seemed like every 10 minutes there was a different sort of announcement or tweet that the game was on, it was off, there was players coming back from loan, there was more cases, there was interviews coming out from Chris Wilder, the press conference was being moved back and forward. It was just, yeah, I mean, just trying to keep up with what was going on Friday was quite ridiculous, really. But just to look back at the facts, on the morning of the game after the first round of tests, Boro recorded 19 positive COVID cases between players and staff. And I think Chris Wilder said in his press conference that 7 out of the 9 players that tested positive were due to start against Sheffield United. So, of course, there lies the first problem. Then, once the press conference starts at 2:00, we then hear that Chris Wilder has been told by the EFL that the game must go ahead, and he's going to be forced to have to recall Jed Spence from Nottingham Forest, Lewis Wing from Sheffield Wednesday, Roman Burrell from Kilmarnock, and Steve Walker from Tranmere. And given that Nathan Wood and Sol Bryn had already returned from their loan spells, you know, you were thinking during that press conference as it was all coming out, I don't actually know. Of course, we don't know the names of which players had COVID. And of course, those that do, we should say, you know, get well soon. And we hope that they make a speedy recovery. But you did think that the possibility was that we were going to travel to Sheffield United and probably field half of the under-12s and maybe Solbrin and Nathan Wood.
Yeah, it was crazy, wasn't it? That Friday afternoon when completely unexpectedly, really, they announced that the game was going to be going ahead. I know it's just light jokes and stuff like that, but we were saying, me and you were starting in midfield, Rory could have been playing, Leo could have been playing, but yeah, it'd have been definitely not second string, but squad players of this Middlesbrough side, and really we didn't want the game to be going ahead at all. I think you can argue it'd have been unfair, wouldn't it? You don't want to go to these places and just play the kids because you have to. You want to go and play your full strength side, especially considering we are one of the form sides in the division at this current time against Sheffield United, who are also one of the form sides in the division. So you just want to go there and both pretty much go toe to toe with your full strength sides. And really, I think it'd have been unfair on the loan players as well, to bring those players back. I did tweet out as well, just my own like little opinions on it. And if we had recalled those loan players and say, I don't know, for example, Lewis Wing came on and played 5 minutes off the bench at Bramall Lane on New Year's Day, he wouldn't be allowed to go out on loan to another club. It'd have to be either staying with Middlesbrough or going back to Sheffield Wednesday. And if he stayed at Middlesbrough, that then takes up one player in our squad list, which means that we can't sign someone else in the January transfer window. So it was all a bit up in the air and made Boro fans and journalists alike thinking, well, that's not going to happen. Like, it simply won't happen. And I simply can't believe that it took one extra COVID case to then get the game called off. But wow, the EFL, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but everyone knows the history with that organisation. And again, they're just proving themselves to be not fit and proper in their own words.
Yeah, as you say, of course, finally common sense prevailed later on in the night, and it only took one extra COVID case, which was bizarre. But, even whilst we weren't aware that the game was going to be off, and it only came later in the day on the Friday night, but, some of the things that were coming out of Chris Wilder's press conference, and of course, during that press conference, he was furious, and rightly so. I mean, you look at the Aaron Connolly situation, and we'll talk further about that signing later, but, everything was agreed prior. Everyone knew that Connolly was on Teesside, courtesy of his girlfriend's Instagram account. But, everything was ready to go. The EFL said, no, you can't we can't register Connolly in time. Then there was some suggestions, because obviously there was players which had COVID symptoms but had tested negative, that they were perhaps going to have to travel by themselves to the game against Sheffield United. And I think it really just comes down to the fact that it was on Sky Sports, and, I think everyone has their own opinions on that organisation. You talk about the EFL, but everyone has their own opinions on that as well. And yeah, it was just finally common sense prevailed, but up until that announcement come out that the game was off, it would have just been ludicrous had the game gone ahead, because again, some of what Chris Wilder was saying, you look at games up and down the Football League and in the Premier League where games have been called off because of 2 or 3 COVID tests, but the team have also had injuries. It wasn't the case in the Middlesbrough setup. We quite literally had just had a breakout of COVID that, in Chris Wilder's words, had, I think, decimated, he said, the Boro squad. So yeah, it was a bizarre decision to not cancel the game as soon as that had happened. But yeah, finally common sense, as I've said, prevailed, and the game was cancelled. But I mean, what a day Friday was, just trying to keep up to date with everything. Like you say, I think at about probably 2:30, the midfield three for the Sheffield United game was me, you, and Lewis Wing at one point.
It was certainly a strange afternoon in terms of Boro news, but yeah, as we say, common sense eventually prevailed. No thanks to the organisation, I don't think. But yeah, I think now, just looking forward, we don't have a game in the Championship for 2 weeks now. So hopefully by then, our players have recovered well enough and feel well enough in themselves to be back fully fit and firing for Reading.
Yeah, and of course, going into 2022, of course, that would have been the first game of 2022. But because we haven't recorded a podcast since the turn of the new year, we felt we did need to rewind a little bit. And we've only got 3 awards, but we felt we had to dish out some awards. given that we started this podcast in 2021, and also, I think some of the Boro players deserve a bit of credit. So let's start off just rewinding back a little bit, really. 2021 awards, Nathan. We've got 3 categories: Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, and Moment of the Year. So I think, first of all, I'll just ask you your Player of the Year. And I think, to be honest, we'll probably have the same player. We haven't asked each other about this before recording, but I'm fairly confident that we'll have the same answer for Player of the Year.
Yeah, we haven't consulted our answers to these questions, but Player of the Year for me is Paddy Mcnair. I think Paddy Mcnair has just been one of the first names on the team sheet, whether that be under Neil Warnock or whether that be under Chris Wilder. He's been a mainstay in both sides, can fill in various positions, whether that be in midfield, like we saw against Blackpool most recently, or in that back three where Neil Warnock said that he could be a Premier League defender, which pretty much sums McNair up, really. When he's good, he is very, very good. His delivery is outstanding. His defensive work has no doubt improved over the last 12 months. And really, I think he's just the standout for me if you look across the full 12 months.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that. And of course, like I predicted, my Player of the Year for 2021 was also Paddy Mcnair. Like you say, I think his defensive capabilities have improved both under Warnock and Wilder. He settled into Wilder's back three, but of course, under Warnock, he was one of the standout players over the past year. And, last season, of course, in 2021, for the second half of that season, he played every game, 46 out of 46, I think he played. So, it was just a remarkable year for Paddy Mcnair, and just solidifying again, as you say, probably up there with one of the best players in the division, to be honest. And, I know Chris Wilder said that he won't be going anywhere in January, but it's no surprise that there has been other clubs sniffing around him, because it's rare that you see Paddy Mcnair put a bad performance together, really.
Yeah, it is. Just moving on now. Young Player of the Year. Again, I think we'll probably be both the same, won't we? But yeah, it has to be, for his breakthrough this season, Isaiah Jones. He's probably cemented himself as Boro's most dangerous player going forward for me. And his defensive work as well is phenomenal, considering he's never really played in a wing-back role ever in his career so far. I think ever since he made that appearance off the bench against Fulham on the opening day of the season for Middlesbrough, I thought he was outstanding that day. He set up Mark Bowler, and he was very dangerous going down that left-hand side on the day, beating, I can't remember who was at full-back that day, but against Fulham, one of the better sides in the division. He was a nuisance when he came on and won lots of key free kick, key fouls in good areas for us that day, and he's only continues to do that, and he's got himself a lot of assists this season, and scored his first goal for Boro as well against Swansea. So I think it's got to be Isaiah Jones, although I'd also shout out Josh Coburn for his debut goal against Sheffield Wednesday last season and this season under Neil Warnock as well, against Luton, Peterborough and West Brom.
Yeah, as you say, he also notched against Luton just to add to that goals tally. But yeah, it's got to be Isaiah Jones, hasn't it? And, just going back to that Fulham game, I think, we all looked at the squad at the start of the season and probably picked out Jones as one of the people that we thought was going to be one of the players replaced and probably sent out on loan to get some games under his belt. And from that moment, even as he burst down the left wing at Fulham away on the opening day of the season, I don't think anyone even at that point would have foreseen him becoming, as you say, one of the first names on the team sheet, and also, learning a whole new position really, because he said himself, anyone that's looked back on his career knows that he has been a winger his full life. Before Chris Wilder, he hadn't really played as a wing back at all. So to learn a new position in itself is one thing, but to just keep on churning out the level of performance, and as you say, his assists and end product are growing as the weeks go by. And his 2021, and although it wasn't the full of 2021, I should say, it was the back end of the year. It was just remarkable, really. And I don't think, as much as Josh Coburn had his moments, and fair play to him for breaking into the side, I think there's only one winner for that award as well, to be honest, Nathan.
Yeah, he's been absolutely remarkable since he came into the squad. And I don't think anyone could have really foreseen the impact that he's made on this Middlesbrough side. And then just lastly, moment of the year. Now, this could be either a funny moment or just a moment of the year, which for me, the moment of the year isn't really a comical one. It's just having fans back in stadiums, really. I think it sort of, at the start of this whole pandemic, we kind of didn't foresee how long it'd last. And the fact that it lasted about 18 months before fans were allowed back into grounds properly, it was quite staggering, really. Lots of people were harmed, whether that be mentally, because they weren't allowed in the stadiums to watch their teams, because it is such an important part of people's lives, football, whether people like it or not. It just is. People look forward to those Saturday afternoons with the mates and whoever they go to the football games with, almost like a getaway from working life in midweek and what have you. So fans being back in the Riverside and following Boro away from home is my moment of the year, just because of how key that is for some people, and how good it was to see a full Riverside on that opening day against Bristol City.
Yeah, mine was quite similar, really. Same sort of tone, in that it was the return of fans in the first game back at the Riverside after so long. I went a little bit more specific and said Uche's opener against Bristol City, just the absolute roar, really, from the Riverside, that everyone had waited so long to hear again. And, it was a nice day that day. The sun was beaming down on the Riverside turf. Healthy crowd back in at the Riverside, and just to take the lead and score that first goal. And of course we went on to get the win as well, but just seeing the ball hit the back of the net and being back in the stadium, it brings back probably a memory. It's only a couple months back now, but I think that's a memory that'll live with me for my whole life, really, because for those 18 months, as you say, it was a tough time for a lot of people, and people don't sometimes realise how much of a sort of, not to go too deep, but the football allows people to just forget about everything that's going on in their heads at home. Whether it, some people might get up for work some days and just think, I hate my job, but one thing's for sure, you've got football at the weekend, and you can see your friends, you can see your family. Some people might even go to the game by themselves, but it is a real important thing in life. And that Uche moment when he opens the score in front of a full Riverside after so long was just really special, to be honest.
Yeah, and that Boro's 2021, along with every other club's, was, of course, a very strange year. At the start of the year, we had that period of time where fans still weren't back in the stadiums, and it is quite hard at that time of the year as well. Of course, football around Christmas time is sort of just the best time of the year to be a football fan, really. Games come thick and fast. You get to travel to all these different places in big numbers because people are off work and what have you. But yeah, as we moved on through the year, things gradually got better. We saw fans return in the Euros in the summer, and we had a fantastic summer watching England. But the main part was the fans being back in the Riverside in August and up in grounds up and down the country. Everyone will have been so happy to be back in watching their clubs, and I think that'd be every club's moment of the year, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, to be honest. I think, yeah, it was so good to be back. And yeah, I think for both of us along the similar lines, that was our moment of the year. So that wraps up the 2021 awards. Before we move on through the podcast, after looking back at 2021, I'm going to ask you one more question about 2022, and not so much an award, but more of a prediction. One player I'm just going to ask you to single out and say, who is your player to look out for in 2022? It might be, Aaron Connolly's just signed, and, he may light the championship up. We don't know yet, but, it may be a young player. It can be anyone you like, but someone that you're thinking that 2022 could be a huge year for.
It's caught me off guard a little bit, and we don't really get all too many good predictions on this podcast. But
that's why we stopped predicting games after that Blackpool game that I've mentioned. So hopefully we don't put a curse on here, but we've got to remain positive. We're going into a new year.
We do.
And we can't ignore it. So yeah, go on, Nathan.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say Marcus Tavernier. I think this is going to be the year where his end product will improve and it'll sort of make him the player in this Middlesbrough side, really. I think, of course, you could just say Isaiah Jones continues on his upward trajectory that he's going on at the minute, but Tavernier, he's had a bit of a tough time with certain group of fans, and I think he's just one player that sort of feels sometimes that he needs to carry the team on his back, when in reality he doesn't. He just needs to do the simple things right, and that'll make him stand out more. But I think his end product will come this year, and with that we'll have a right player on our hands. So my player to look out for this year will be Marcus Tavernier. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, do you know what? To be honest, this was sort of off the cuff because I haven't got it in my notes. I thought I'd just add it in as we were going. So I haven't even really had a chance to think about it myself. But immediately, like you say, of course, I think the easy answer would probably be Isaiah Jones and seeing how he develops. But I was sort of drawn between two. Firstly, Andras Sparar, because by all accounts, he's just starting to hit a little bit of form. And, if reports are to be believed, as was in the summer, that if Sparar hits the 15-goal mark, or Boro do achieve promotion, it becomes a permanent signing. So, of course, if either of those happen, then it's been a half decent year for Middlesbrough. But I think one that I'm more intrigued by, and after everything that went on in the summer, I look at Martin Piero and I just think, a year's such a long time, and I think he's already shown what he's capable of, and I just think, what can he achieve? At the moment he finds himself out of the team, so he's got to firstly win himself back into that team and nail down a starting spot. But I'd like to think that, given Piero's clear ability and talent, that he will find his way back into the team. And then from that point onwards, hopefully he excels and really starts doing week in, week out what he did at Cardiff and controlled that game and got himself on the score sheet. So, yeah, Piero for me is one that I'll be looking at in 2022, and fingers crossed I haven't just cursed him and the man from Argentina actually ends the Boropolis prediction curse and goes on and has a quite wonderful year, and who knows what he could achieve across the next year.
Yeah, and who knows where Boro could end up in the next year. It's all up in the air.
We won't be making predictions about that because...
No, we definitely won't be, but we'll just say who knows where Boro will be this time in a year's time. So, yeah, just moving on now. Transfer news. It's that time of the year. It is the Boropolis page congestion time of the year, where just in your inboxes, it's just Boropolis tweets every 2 seconds about, who knows, a Brazilian forward like it was in the summer. It could be a centre half. It could be a goalkeeper. Who knows who it will be? But one player who has been recalled from a loan spell is Solbrin. As we mentioned earlier in the podcast, Solbrin has been recalled from Queen of the South, where so far this season he kept 7 clean sheets in 21 appearances for the Scottish side. And we also saw Dejan Styanovich join Ingolstadt in Germany on loan, but that deal has the option to make it permanent in the summer. So we did expect some sort of movement on the goalkeeper front in January. As we moved through December, we sort of predicted that this would happen. But we kind of expected a new goalkeeper to be brought in, not one that was out on loan, that was part of our academy. So what are your thoughts on that one, Chris?
Yeah, I think from obviously the reviews that Solbrin's received from Queen of the South, and of course, it's quite ironic that we got Isaiah Jones out to Scotland, and of course he's come back and made quite the impact. So yeah, I mean, from all of the Queen of the South fans' opinions on him, he's been quite magnificent for them actually, and really, I think I also saw that the month that's just gone, that he won their Player of the Month. So again, he's just showing that really he's quite capable of playing football at that level, and it just remains to be seen now if he can make the step up, because from what reports are saying, it looks like Solbrin has actually been brought back to compete with both Luke Daniels and Joe Lumley. And Solbrin's a goalkeeper and a young academy graduate that for a number of years now really has sort of been in and around the first team setup, and it was, I think, this season especially important that he managed to go out and get some games, and he's done that, and he's been recalled. And of course, with Styanovich leaving, it installs him now as third choice. But we'll talk about it as we progress onto the Mansfield game. But I wouldn't be shocked if he starts that game, and I think if he continues the form that he's shown at Queen of the South, then Joe Lumley's going to face a battle to keep that number 1 shirt moving forwards into the second half of the season. And just briefly on Dejan Styanovich, I don't think anyone really is going to be devastated at the loss of Styanovich. I think he was brought in under Woodgate and made, I don't want to say an impact, but he come in and played a few games. Was never horrendous. And then, of course, he went out on loan to St. Pauli, I think, last season. He's come back to the club, couldn't quite get his move away again, and has just really played a few reserve games and been on the bench a couple of times. But yeah, I think that'll probably be the last that we see of Dejan Styanovich, and best of luck to him, because he was never, as I say, never let us down horrifically. So best of luck, and hopefully he goes and gets some games at Ingolstadt.
Yeah, and then I think we just need to move on now to probably the biggest news, which isn't even an incoming. The biggest news really of the transfer window so far for Middlesbrough. Jed Spence is the name that we've all been looking at since Chris Wilder came in, really. we looked at that right wing back role, obviously not foreseeing the evolution of Isaiah Jones in that position, which has just been astounding to watch. And we were thinking that Jed Spence would be immediately recalled in January to play in that role. But it seems now that Jed Spence will be staying at Nottingham Forest. John Percy from the Telegraph has reported that Spence is staying at Forest till the end of the season after Boro and Nottingham Forest agreed an extra bit of a loan fee coming into Middlesbrough Football Club. So a lot of people will be thinking, why haven't we brought Jed Spence back? Because he's at a playoff rival at this current stage. And we saw in Nottingham Forest's performance last week that they dreadfully missed an outlet on that right-hand side. So why had Middlesbrough not chosen to bring Jed Spence back? Well, we'll have to see what Chris Wilder says in his upcoming press conferences. But Chris, what are your thoughts on Jed Spence staying at Nottingham Forest and not coming back to Middlesbrough to provide a backup or competition to Isaiah Jones?
Yeah, I think what you say there is part of the reason potentially coming back, I should say, as backup, because I don't think anyone really foresaw, like we've spoken about, the emergence of Isaiah Jones in that right wing back role. And I don't think had Jed Spence had come back, he wouldn't have got into the team straight away. He would have had to wait his chance, and maybe given his form, if Isaiah Jones continues it, probably would have never got back into the team barring injuries or suspension. So I think that's part of the reason why Middlesbrough have probably done it. I think because of the fact that, as you say, Spence has had a really successful spell at Forest. You know, the Forest fans love him. Steve Cooper, in his post-match press conference, when asked about it after the game at the Riverside, said, you know, it's quite clear what we all think of Spence at Forest. We love him to pieces. We want him to stay, type of thing. So yeah, obviously there's the added loan fee that we've renegotiated with Forest, and I think it just comes down to the fact that Spence probably just wants to stay at Forest. He's enjoying his football. He's pretty much guaranteed a starting spot, and I think really that means that it probably signals the end of Jed Spence's time at the football club, because I think had he come back, you know, there was always a chance he could have broken back into our team. But I think now the fact that he remains at Forest, as long as he keeps up the form that he's shown in the first half of the season, it probably means that, you know, he'll get Premier League interest in the summer, or if not Premier League interest, certainly Nottingham Forest would be looking to do that deal permanently. So, yeah, I think it looks as though he's going to stay. It's been reported by a lot of sources that he will. Of course, we haven't heard from Chris Wilder, but yeah, as you say, Jed Spence is going to be staying at Forest, and I think for both parties, if Jed Spence doesn't want to come back to Middlesbrough, then that's the best decision from the club. So, moving on from Jed Spence, Nathan, we have an incoming, not returning from a loan. We have an incoming coming on loan from a different club. And of course, that man is Aaron Connolly, coming in from Brighton, as we saw on Boropolis, as you were saying, plenty of tweets being sent out by the account. His girlfriend and former Love Island contestant revealed that he was on Teesside days before he was announced. Firstly, it's great to see that the club are getting business done early, but secondly, what are your thoughts on the signing of Aaron Connolly?
Yeah, I think he's a good addition to this current squad, really. I think we all identified that Chris Wilder will be looking to bring in some backup on the front line in January, and it is good to get business done early. Connolly isn't getting all too much game time in the Premier League for Brighton. Of course, they've got some good forwards there. You look at Maupay, Welbeck, other players like that. So I think he'll fit into our system quite well as well. As he said, he likes to get in behind defences. He's quite quick and nippy. And really, I think it's probably a good move for him as well. I think he'll come here with a bit of a point to prove. I think when he broke through onto the scene at Brighton on his debut, he scored twice against Spurs. I think from then, everyone kind of expected that he'd continue and score quite regularly, but it hasn't worked out for him. I think he's only scored 8 goals for Brighton in about 50 games, which isn't necessarily the best record in the world, but considering he's came off the bench quite regularly, then you kind of got to give him a bit of leeway. But Chris Wilder will have his arm round him. We've heard that Connolly has a bit, I don't want to say attitude problem, but there's been questions about his attitude. And I'm sure Chris Wilder will be looking to sort of strike that out of him and get him firing on all fronts for Middlesbrough Football Club.
Yeah, I think, as you say, I think what pleases me the most, and as I previously mentioned, is the fact that quite clearly, Chris Wilder weeks ago now set out a sort of date, and that being the Mansfield Cup tie, that he wanted to have some new bodies in by then, and he's already got one in. Of course, we've got a week before that Mansfield game, so it remains to be seen if any more will come in. But he's got Connolly in, as you say. There has been some question marks over his attitude from Brighton fans. But I think what Connolly needs, and he sort of said himself in that Middlesbrough interview that was released this morning, he just needs games, but he recognises himself how difficult it's going to be to get in the team. So, yeah, I think that arrival probably signals the end of a forward, at least, whether that be, there hasn't really been any reports about it, but whether that be Arnold Hernandez returning to Norwich, which I personally hope isn't the case, because I think he's offered a lot in the previous 2 games. But also, of course, you look at Ikpeas, who come on briefly against Blackpool, but I just don't think it's Chris Wilder's type of striker. And, that's nothing against Uche, because, we've talked massively about one of the biggest moments he's given us of the year. But not only that, he's put in some good performances, worked really hard for the team. And if he was to leave, I'd definitely say, and I know for a fact that you would say, that he goes with our best wishes.
Yeah, 100%. Chris Wilder's got a certain way of playing, and if players don't fit into that way of playing, then it's just unfortunate. I think we will probably see another incoming on the strikers front, alongside probably some additions in midfield and defence. I think we'll probably be looking all over, really, and I think Neil Taylor will be looking to tie him down again until the end of the season. He was only signed on a short-term deal until January, which looks to have expired now, apparently. But we'll be looking to get him in again, I think. And really, we've just got to wait and see on the transfer front. So, shameless plug, follow Boropolis on Twitter, and you'll probably get all the insight from wherever that may be. If it's in Argentina, Chris is outstanding at finding Argentina newspapers that fire news in Spanish. So Chris is sat there at 3:00 in the morning, Google translating Argentina Gazette posts. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see who we're interested in, and hopefully Chris isn't doing all-nighters trying to find out South American forward news.
Yeah, do you know what, Nathan? It was full of that in the summer, wasn't it? Piero, Muniz, and others as well, to be fair. But yeah, I'm not so sure that we'll be seeing quite as extravagant players, but who knows? Maybe Kieran Scott has got some absolute gems hidden up his sleeve. and perhaps I will be on the Boropolis night shift again during January, trying to translate articles. So yeah, shameless plug, as Nathan says, follow the Twitter. That's where we post out all of the rumours and breaking news, and we try to be as quick as we can on that front. But yeah, just on Neil Taylor, there has been interest in him reportedly. Coventry, West Brom were two of the sides mentioned, but hopefully we can get Neil Taylor tied down, because he's been quite the replacement for Mark Bowler, who's going to be out for quite a while now.
Yeah, he has been. He's filled in really well, and I think in Wilder's press conference we sort of heard different pieces of news that I didn't really think we would hear from Chris Wilder. Hearing about the length of time players will be out injured. You heard 10 weeks plus for Bowler, 10 weeks plus for Amiobi. I'm surprised you even mentioned Amiobi, if I'm honest, because he is the forgotten man after all.
He really is.
But yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see. I think Neil Taylor will hopefully be signed almost in like a Duncan Watmore situation from when we had Watmore last season on a short-term deal, and there was interest around him, but eventually he signed a deal at Middlesbrough, and look at him now, firing in winners at Blackpool away and causing scenes like he did the other day. So hopefully Neil Taylor's signed till the end of the season at least, because he's been very good since he's had this short run in the side.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought really when Duncan Watmore come on trial after being released by Sunderland, who were in League One at the time, that would be having moments like we did the other day. But it's certainly our game. We've took some fairly decent players off Sunderland over the years, so I'm sure they'll be regretting letting a few of their ex-players leave, and who are now shining at Middlesbrough. So cheers for that, Sunderland. Yeah, just moving on really, and finishing up what is being an absolute monster of a podcast. I feel like I've been sat at this chair for about 5 hours now. But we do have a game coming up on Saturday. Of course, this will be released on Monday night, so it is the following Saturday. But Mansfield in the FA Cup. I think really we're yet to see what sort of state the squad's going to be in. Which players will have finished the isolation periods, and if there's been any more cases. So it's difficult really to predict who will play. But really, I put down 3 questions just to put towards you, Nathan, about obviously the game. I know you'll be travelling to Mansfield, so you'll be looking to add on to that win at Blackpool away. So, firstly, what do you want to see from the game? And it sort of ties in really with which players would you like to see start? Because, of course, you want to see a win, but more importantly, which players would you like to see given a chance?
Yeah, it's quite a difficult question to answer this, just because of the whole situation around us at the minute with players testing positive for COVID. Obviously, we just don't know who is available to play at this current time, but I think just looking at the current squad, sort of eradicating COVID out of the question for the minute, I'd say Piero needs to start this game, really. He hasn't really been given all too many chances under Chris Wilder, of course, being injured when Wilder first came to the football club. He hasn't really been given a chance since because of how good the midfield three's been. So I think Piero needs to be given a chance just so we can see, so Chris Wilder can see what he offers. I think we'll probably see Toyosi Olasanya, if I'm honest, a player signed.
I think that I don't, because this is an issue actually that was brought up, as you say, in the press conference. I think Wilder may have pronounced Olasanya's name wrong in the press conference.
Yeah, he did, I think.
And I think he said that he's still out for a few weeks.
All right.
I might be wrong on that, but I remember thinking,
yeah,
I've never heard that name before, so I'm going to guess that that's Olasanya. So I hope I'm right on that one. But yeah, continue, Nathan.
Yeah. Well, if I'm honest, I think we'll probably see Josh Coburn, maybe. Hasn't really been given a chance under Chris Wilder, but was name checked in Chris Wilder's first interview at the football club. So I think we may see Josh Coburn there. Grant Hall possibly may be in that defence. I think maybe Peltier, possibly Bamba. Goalkeepers, I would say Solbrin will be the goalkeeper that comes in, if I'm honest. I can't see why he'd have been recalled so soon if he wasn't to be played in this game. And I think the main one's going to be Connolly up front. I think it'll be Connolly and Coburn up front, or maybe even Connolly and Uche in sort of like a big man, little man combination up front. So yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to get a gauge of what this side is like deeper into the squad, because Chris Wilder doesn't really like changing his starting 11s all too much. So I think it'll be pretty much a full changed starting 11. So it'll certainly be interesting, but I can't say I'm all too fussed whether we win or lose, if I'm honest. I think we all really know that we're not going to be going too far in this cup competition. You look at the Premier League sides and how strong they are in depth. Cough, cough, Manchester City, you have like £200 million worth of players in their second string side. So it's just one of them things that you got to look at. It is getting more difficult to go on cup runs for lower league sides. And yeah, I'm not too fussed about the FA Cup this season, especially given the run that we're on in the league.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that, to be honest. Now, I know if you're listening and you're an old school FA Cup romantic, then it'll be hard to hear us say that. But I think, yeah, as you say, Nathan, you know, what we need to focus on really this season for me is pretty much just putting up a fight to make sure that we're in and amongst the playoffs at the end of the season. And if we can, you know, go on further than that, then that's just an added bonus. But I think the main aim really is to make sure that we're in the playoffs at the end of the season. And, you know, you look at the squad, it's depleted because of COVID. As we say, we're unaware sort of when isolations will finish and things like that. So that's also one to consider. I think, to be honest, Chris Wilder will look at the game and still want to win. You know, as he said before, winning breeds momentum, it breeds confidence. And of course, I don't think any manager has ever gone into a game thinking, well, I don't really care if we get beat. At least that's not what they say in the press. But yeah, just another player that has come back off loan, and it happened really at the start of December, I think it was. So sort of been forgotten about a little bit. Nathan Wood obviously returned from Hibernian, and he's going to be legible to play in the game. So it'll be quite exciting really to see him returning and hopefully put on a good performance, because I think you know, it's getting to a stage now where we've spoken about, you know, what we expect from certain players in 2022, but it's getting to the stage now where I think Nathan Wood will look at how long he's been in and around the team for, and really think that over the course of the next year, he wants to be, you know, a solid player in Boro's squad.
Yeah, I do think that he'll be looking to get in and amongst it, if I'm honest, in amongst that squad. It hasn't worked out for him this loan spell at Hibernian, but he did last season when he was on loan at Crewe get a few plaudits, to be fair to him. So yeah, I think he provides a good option at centre half, especially as cover for any of the three really that are in there at the minute. And I think he's probably more suited to be that fourth choice centre half, if I'm honest, with his physicality, with his pace, with him being able to step out from the back and play the ball in a midfield. So, yeah, it is a big year for Nathan Wood, and hopefully he thrives during this year as well.
Yeah, I did. You might have seen him smirking a little bit there. I'm guessing someone was just about to come into your room or something there, because I did see you sort of give a bit of a side eye to the camera. So luckily we weren't interrupted. I'm guessing that's what it was, but yeah, that's why I was smirking there.
Yeah, it was. Someone interrupted him, but yeah, whoever it is, they'll probably be listening to this podcast. So just so you know, you've made the podcast. Well done.
Yeah, well done, whoever that is. Sure on specifics, but yeah, well done, and thank you for not completely interrupting us. You just got a little image visually of Nathan sort of gritting his teeth and giving it one of them get out. So yeah, I think that wraps us up quite nicely, to be honest, Nathan. As I say, we've covered a hell of a lot in this podcast. We've covered 2 games. We're back after the new year. We're back after Christmas. We hope everyone had a lovely Christmas and a good night for New Year. Of course, a few shameless plugs before we say goodbye. Thursday nights on Twitter Spaces, we have been for a number of weeks now doing a live, normally starts around 7:30. We've had Dom Shaw of the Gazette on in the previous weeks, and I think Dom's going to be coming on again relatively soon. So by all means, check out that on Twitter. As Nathan says, we'll be trying to keep up to date with everything that is going on in the world of transfers and incomings and outgoings at Middlesbrough. But apart from that, I think, what else have I got to plug, Nathan? I feel like I've been plugging a lot here. Subscribe.
Anything, everything.
Yeah, anything and everything, as you say. Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us a review on any audio platforms. Share the account. Yeah, if you really want to do that, we would be massively appreciative. I don't even know if that's a word. I think it's about time we go. We've been going for a while now. So yeah, to finish up, thank you very much for watching and listening to the Boropolis Podcast again. It's been great to be back, and we'll see you again next week.